In this example, we're going to look at double integration, and in particular, reversing the order of integration for variable limits. The question is taken from tutorial 18. So the question is to look at reversing the order of integration for the following double integral. And the integral is a double integral of a function of x and y. It doesn't matter for the purposes of this example what that function is, it's just some general function. And in this case it's integrated first with respect to x, between the limits of x equals 0 and x equals y. And then with respect to y, between the limits of y equals 0 and y equals 1. So the first thing we need to do to tackle the problem is to sketch the region of integration, and that region is given by the limits and the limits only. So if we look at sketching this region of integration, we're now sketching from the lower limits of x to the upper limits of x initially. So we're sketching from x equals 0 to the line x equals y, and then for the y limits from y equals 0 up to y equals 1. And the region of integration is the region contained inside these four lines. So it's the region inside the triangle. So if we now think about the order of integration, we said that we were integrating first with respect to x, so we can consider a horizontal strip parallel with the x-axis. So we're looking at integrating along a strip like this in the first instance. So at the lower end of that strip we have x equals 0, at the upper end we have x equals y, and then we can add together all the little strips from y equals 0 all the way up to y equals 1. So that's what that double integral means in relation to the region of integration. So if we now want to reverse the order of integration, we need to redraw this sketch. Think about what's going on. So the region of integration is not going to change. It's still going to be this triangle that's bounded by So the shape of the region of integration doesn't change. It's still bounded by these lines. But we're now going to think about, instead of a horizontal strip, we're going to think about what happens with vertical strip inside this triangle. So we want to think about the limits that we gather together the limits. So we think about what's happening at the bottom end of this strip, which is on the diagonal line. So that was given by x equals y or y equals x. And then the top end of this strip is given by the line y equals 1. So for our y limits, we're going from y equals x to y equals 1. And then we're adding together all the little vertical strips, so they will go from the left hand side of the triangle, from here, from x equals 0 to the right hand side of this triangle here, which is given by the line x equals 1. So we're going adding the strips together from x equals 0 all the way along to x equals 1. And that will give us the same region of integration when we combine those together. So let's just think about putting those limits onto our integral. So we've said we're going now from y limits from y equals x up to y equals 1, and then adding together all the little strips from x equals 0 to x equals 1. So this gives us now the reversed order of integration. First integrating with respect to y and then with respect to x, with new limits for y and new limits for x. And to get these new limits, we have had to sketch the region of integration. Okay, so that's the end of that example.
Made with DoubleCast Pro.